Hey guys, Hannah and Mike here with Delta. Today we're installing a single handle bathroom faucet. Single handle faucets are designed for a 1-hole or 4-inch 3-hole sink configuration.
Now today we're using the Lahara for our model, but Delta offers a wide variety of different styles and finishes for this type of faucet. Also, if your faucet has these gray supply lines included like ours does, then you know you have what's called a DST faucet. If it's not DST, then you'll need to provide your own supply lines and connect those separately.
This is a super quick and super easy install. Let's get started.
Now before we begin, there are some basic tools and supplies you will need to complete this installation, so make sure you have these on hand. You want to grab an adjustable wrench, some safety glasses, a towel for some light cleanup, and also a bucket for when we flush the lines.
You may also need a flashlight in case it's dark underneath your sink, plumber's tape if you're replacing the drain, and silicone in case you're working with an uneven sink surface.
Now that we've got everything together, I think we're ready to begin. Now the first step of our installation is going to be to place our faucet onto our sink. But before we get going, I want to point out just a couple things. The first is you'll notice our installation is for a single hole configuration. If your installation is for a 4-inch 3-hole configuration, you're going to want to use the included escutcheon plate. This is great because it will cover those extra holes we're not going to be using. To use this, we're going to feed our PEX supply lines through the center of the escutcheon plate, run it all the way up the lines. As you get up to the top, you want to make sure that you feed the mounting stud into this additional hole to keep everything aligned correctly. I'm going to set that to the side since we're not using it for our single hole installation. Instead, we're going to be using this plastic gasket. Now your model of faucet may look slightly different. You may have an extra base trim ring, something similar. Just check your instructions to make sure you have everything fit on there in the correct order. Now this gasket, you'll notice, has two sides. It has a ridge on the top and a smooth side on the bottom. I want to make sure the ridge faces up as I feed my PEX supply lines through the middle. And this tag is actually really important. I want to make sure I don't rip this off as I feed the gasket up the line. It's got some great information on it. It's got the model number of your faucet, the date of manufacturer, even has the customer support number if you have any additional questions. All right, with that gasket on there, I'm going to feed my PEX supply lines down through the center hole of my sink. Now, I do want to point out, you'll notice our installation has a nice smooth surface I'm going to be installing on. If your installation has a bit of a rough surface or like a tile countertop, you may want to add a little ring of silicone just around the hole before placing your faucet down in there to ensure a nice watertight seal. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and place my PEX supply lines down through the center hole. Again, making sure nothing's crimped and that tag stays intact. Place it right down, nice and centered. Now I'm going to hold this in place as Hannah tightens it up from down below. However, if you're doing this alone, it may be a little difficult just because it wants to kind of angle to the side. That's totally fine. A little bit of a pro tip is you can actually tighten this yourself from underneath, just using your hands, not too snug, just enough to keep it upright. Then come back up top. Make sure everything looks nice, straight, and centered. Once it looks good, go back underneath and do your final tighten. All right, that looks great.
Now we're going to secure the faucet to the sink deck using this bracket. Now you'll see it's got bumps on it. We want to make sure the bumps face up and that the curved side faces the back of the wall. So we're just going to feed it onto the mounting stud, and then we're going to use this wrench that's included in your packaging, and it's already preloaded with this nut in here. If it's fallen out in the box, you can just load it right back in, and then we'll use it. Okay, now we're going to secure our PEX supply lines to our stub outs. Delta's made it super easy by color coding the lines so you know which is hot and which is cold. Red for hot, blue for cold. We're going to start with blue. Now if your lines are too long, you can loop them, but mine is tighter than 8 inches, so I don't want to do that. Instead, I'm going to spiral it. And I actually think the easiest way to spiral your lines is to start with the loop and then just feed it right down onto the top of your stub out. Now I'm just going to hand tighten this for now. Okay, now you'll see a diamond pattern on the top of the nut. You want to make sure you use your adjustable wrench and do one 360-degree full rotation around to make sure it's all the way tight. Okay, I can see the diamonds again. That lets me know it's tight, and I'll move on to the next side and do the same steps. Now I'm going to turn on the water so that Mike can flush the faucet up top. While I'm down here, I'm also going to check for leaks. Okay, everything looks good.
Now we want to flush our lines, and we want to do this because we want to make sure there's no debris in the lines that could have gotten in there during installation. If it's in our faucet, it could restrict the flow, so we just want to make sure everything's nice and clear. To do this, we're going to use our aerator wrench that's included in our packaging, so make sure you didn't throw that out. You'll notice on the aerator wrench it has these little teeth. These teeth fit into the aerator cartridge that's on the underside of your spout. So I take my wrench, I'm going to feed it around underneath the spout until I get to set into the cartridge itself. Give it a couple turns to unscrew the cartridge from the spout, and then the cartridge will fall right out. I want to make sure I hold on to this, so I'm going to set that off to the side. And now I'm going to turn my faucet onto full mix position. That's equally hot and cold, basically directly in the middle all the way up. I want to make sure I'm pulling water from both lines. Also, there could be a little bit of splashing that goes on with this with the increased water pressure, so I like to take a washcloth, just kind of drape it over the end of my spout and hold it in place as I do this. I'm going to run the water for about 30 seconds to make sure all the debris is out of the line. All right, that should be good. Get my washcloth out of the way. Now I'll replace my aerator, basically reversing the steps, again using my wrench. I find it's easier to fit the teeth of the wrench into the aerator cartridge first and then put everything back up underneath, rethreading it into my spout. Should go pretty easy, so you don't want to force it. Just make sure it's nice and snug up in there. All right, I think we're good. Now is also a great time to check for leaks. So I'm looking around the base of my faucet along the handle. I don't see any drips at all, so I think we're pretty good. Ready to move on.
All right, just dropped in our lift rod, checked for leaks. I think we're good.
Now our drain was already in place, but if you're installing a new one or need help connecting your lift rod, we've got a video for that too.
That was pretty easy.
Yeah, it was, and it looks great.
Don't forget, if you have any questions, give Delta's customer service team a call.
Enjoy your new faucet.